A strange twist is shaking things up behind the scenes at the Jefferson Health Training Complex, my friend. A trade proposal that nobody saw coming just gained traction in the specialized NFL media, and it involves one of the biggest names in recent Philadelphia Eagles history. We're talking about a wide receiver who carried Philadelphia's offense on his back for 4 straight seasons. A physical freak who helped transform Jalen Hurts into the quarterback he is today. And now, an analyst from NFL.com itself is proposing that this star gets dealt this offseason to a destination nobody expected, with a return package that raises a lot of questions. I'm going to break down every detail of this blockbuster proposal, reveal the plans for this Eagles star and the team that wants to sign him, and explain why the timing of this trade is far more complicated than it looks. But before we get into it, if you're a die-hard Eagles fan and you want to stay on top of everything happening with this team, hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel, because the 2026 offseason is shaping up to be one of the most eventful in Philadelphia in years. Here's the deal. Matt Okada, an analyst at NFL.com, recently published a breakdown exploring the best possible destinations for an Eagles wide receiver in a potential trade. Among the 6 teams he identified as possible suitors, one of them makes an argument that, at first glance, seems contradictory. Why? Because that team is the exact franchise that traded this wide receiver to the Eagles back in 2022. The idea of bringing the guy back 4 years later is, at the very least, unusual. But Okada sees the logic in it, and you're going to understand why over the next few minutes. First, it's worth pointing out a little-known NFL rule that prevents a team from reacquiring a player they previously traded within 2 years of the original deal. That window closed a long time ago, which means the door is wide open, and any team in the league could make a move. And the name at the center of all of this is A.J. Brown, the #1 wide receiver of the Philadelphia Eagles, and the team that wants to bring him back. The Tennessee Titans, the exact franchise that drafted him in 2019, and then traded him to Philadelphia 4 years later. So what does the actual proposal look like? Okada laid out a package where the Titans would send the Eagles the number 35 pick in the 2026 draft, the 2nd overall selection in the 2nd round, plus a 1st-round pick in the 2027 draft. In return, Philadelphia would send A.J. Brown to Nashville along with the number 178 pick, a 5th-rounder in 2026. But why would the Titans do this? The answer is their quarterback, Cam Ward, the 2nd-year player Tennessee hopes will be the face of the franchise for the next decade. Okada argues that bringing in an elite wide receiver like A.J. Brown to serve as a catalyst for Ward's development is exactly the kind of move that can fast-track a young QB's growth curve. Think about it, that's what Brown did for Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, and it's what Stefon Diggs did for Josh Allen in Buffalo. A true #1 receiver alongside a young QB can completely change the trajectory of a franchise. But this is where things get complicated for the Titans, and Okada himself acknowledges it. Tennessee only has 1 first-round pick in 2026, and it's the 4th overall selection. Brown isn't worth a top 5 pick. So the Titans would need to work with what's available below that, and the proposal of sending the 2026 second-rounder plus a 2027 first-rounder was the financial engineering needed to make the deal work for both sides. On top of that, the NFL.com analyst pointed out that Tennessee has more salary cap space than any other team in the league right now, $63.2 million available at the time the article was published. That means absorbing Brown's hefty contract wouldn't be a financial problem for the Titans. They have the money. The question is whether it's worth betting on a wide receiver who turns 29 in June and is coming off a 2025 season filled with turbulence. And that's where A.J. Brown's story over the past 12 months comes into the conversation. The 2025 season was, without a doubt, the most dramatic and controversial of his career in Philadelphia. Brown had moments of public tension with the organization, and despite putting up 78 receptions, the quality of his production dropped off. The number that stands out, 12.9 yards per catch, the worst of his career since arriving with the Eagles. Brown barely cleared the 1,000-yard mark for the season. For a player of his caliber, his contract, and his reputation, that number is a red flag. It's not catastrophic, but it's concerning enough to fuel the narrative that maybe the partnership between Brown and Philadelphia has reached the end of its most productive cycle. The Eagles' front office, for its part, appears to have moved in ways that suggest preparation for a world without A.J. Brown on the roster. During 2026 free agency, Howie Roseman went to the market and signed both Marquise Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore, strengthening the wide receiver group with 2 new names. Elijah Moore came in to slot in as the fourth receiver in the team's hierarchy. These moves don't prove that the A.J. Brown trade is a done deal, but they create a safety net that allows the franchise to act if an interesting offer comes along. Howie Roseman rarely makes moves without a reason. The question all of Philadelphia is asking is he building depth, or is he preparing for the departure of his biggest offensive star? Now let's get to the most important detail of this entire negotiation, because this is where the calendar makes everything complicated. There's a massive financial incentive for the Eagles not to make this trade before June 1st, 2026. If the transaction happens before that date, the Eagles absorb a dead cap hit of $43.44 million, according to data from Over the Cap. $43.44 million essentially flushed down the drain. That's an absurd number that would severely limit the franchise's ability to make other moves for the rest of the offseason. But if the Eagles wait until after June 1st, that number drops dramatically to $16.35 million, a difference of more than $27 million, just based on the timing of the transaction. With that said, what's the specific complication for the Titans scenario? If the Eagles want to wait until June to minimize the cap hit, they likely won't be able to include the Titans' 2026 second-round pick in the deal, since the draft happens before that. The compensation would need to be restructured, possibly with more weight placed on the 2027 first-rounder or some additional asset. That makes the logistics of a deal with Tennessee significantly more complex than Okada's initial proposal suggests, and it's a factor that could realistically push the Eagles toward teams with more flexible compensation structures when it comes to the calendar. Looking at the bigger picture, it's hard to ignore that the Titans are currently a team. Okada's logic centers on quarterback development. Bring in an elite WR1 to help Cam Ward grow faster, even if the team isn't quite ready to compete for a championship yet. It's a valid philosophy. It's exactly what the Eagles did when they brought Brown over in 2022, when Philadelphia wasn't necessarily the favorite to reach the Super Bowl either. And look at how that story ended. For the Eagles, the central question is simple in theory and complicated in practice. What do you prefer? Keep A.J. Brown, your best wide receiver, in a dynamic that visibly soured in 2025, or trade him for picks that fuel the future of the team? Is a 2026 second-rounder and a 2027 first-rounder a fair return for a 29-year-old player with a history of drama and declining production? Or should the Eagles demand more before giving up their biggest offensive name? With so much still up in the air, the timing of the trade, the health of Brown's relationship with the organization, the additions of Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore to the roster, and the massive dead cap number lurking before June, what would be the best decision for the Eagles regarding A.J. Brown this 2026 offseason? Hold him and bet on a turnaround, or deal him now and start building toward the future? Drop your opinion in the comments. I really want to know what you think. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a single update.